People are saying it's harsh or it's negative, and I'm sure people have their reasons for it. But again, I'd rather keep something minor from becoming something major.
I knew once you put the pocket square on, we're about to have a real show today. I see what you're doing.
Listen.
Let's
grow. Let's get it.
What's going on, people? Black Dad, Unfiltered. We are here yet once again. I'm Carlos V. Spencer.
And I'm Coach Rod. We're here to change the narrative and perception on Black fathers through healthy, authentic conversation.
Yes.
What we got today, Los?
Man, listen, what we got today is, two Black fathers talking some good stuff to some Black people. But all on top of that, we navigating parenting, right? Navigating parenting. We're going to get into that for our topic for today's show. Got a couple things we're going to touch on for sure. But first and foremost, I usually ask you the question of how fatherhood has been. I'm going to chime in a little bit myself before I throw the question to you about how fatherhood has been, man. And we've talked offline many times about how this show and doing this show and participating in this show has changed our own selves and the way we relate to our own children. And for me, this last week, talking to my boys, talking to my sons, just looking at some of our episodes, emotional intelligence was one of them. Looking at the episode, listening into it, and really gave me some good feedback, some good information. And I was very intentional this week in talking to my boys, in particular my two young boys, just about how they feel. How are you doing? How is your heart feeling? How are things with you? And making sure that I was modeling it before them. So for me this week, not even just checking up on them, not even just talking to them, but beyond the regular, hey, how you doing? Hey, what's going on with you? I want to make sure that I checked into their emotions. And while I was checking into theirs, I also modeled mine. What does that look like? Me telling my sons, hey, I miss y'all. And this has been hard. I haven't seen you guys in a while. It's been really difficult for me. This has been really hard. I really miss y'all. And I could say before I wouldn't go into stuff like that because I wouldn't want them to feel it too much. But from watching and listening to our shows, I think it's really important for me to illustrate that so that they can see their father and have a point of reference for them seeing a Black man and they can say this is okay for themselves. So that was this week for me, man, in fatherhood. How about yourself?
Well, before I get into me, I want to ask you a question about that.
Okay.
Did you feel a different response from them in that conversation? Did something on their end come out a little differently to you?
You know what? For me, I can say I thank God for it. It wasn't something that I've never done before with them. I've done it more intentional. And like I said, I'm talking to my boys every day. I'm giving them a call, reaching out to them, even when they're not spending their time with me. And so for me, I was more intentional in doing it more often. And for me, what I can say is that I think it feels like it's a regular part of our conversation.
Oh, that's good.
So by doing that with them, it's not a difference from them. It's not a shock. It's not a, what are you talking about, Dad? It's not a, they go right into their answer. How's your heart feeling? It's feeling pretty good today, Dad. It's feeling pretty good. Are you feeling anxious at all day? No, I've been actually doing pretty good. And so for them, I believe it's becoming natural for them, which I love that. And that's a great question too for you to ask me that.
Yeah, it's interesting because obviously my son is a little bit older than your younger two boys. He's getting ready to go off to college.
Yeah.
And I mean, he has his walls up, right? Just has his walls up. It is what it is. Doesn't change the fact that I'm your dad. I'm always going to love you. But I spend a lot more time in our discussions or whenever there has to be a discussion, explaining what I feel. I always preface it by saying, son, because you are a man and because I respect you, I'm going to tell you how I feel. So when you get into a relationship, you know what it's like to be on both ends of this conversation, right? Being the one that's going to have to express yourself and being the one that has to receive someone else expressing themselves. And, it's intentional for me because, again, he's getting ready to go, right? He's getting ready to leave.
So he's getting ready to go to, for those listening in, and if you didn't catch the last episode, he's getting ready to go to college.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So it's just more or less like, okay, what can I give you? What more skills can I give to you that adds value to your life and also prepares me as a father to let go of my only son? So it's been interesting. Again, it's every day is a day to get better as a parent.
Yes, that's a great way to put it.
It's a day to get better as a parent. It's a day to get better as a human being.
It is.
So it's been quite fun, and just seeing him grow and blossom, even in these last few days. Because again, I'm looking at him differently. He's no longer a high school student, right?
True.
You get ready to leave, and so it's, to your point, how you feeling. And again, he's not as open because growing up in the city just makes you a little bit more hardened.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how
Yeah.
loving your parents are, and that's something I hope we talk about at some point in the future. Just the balance between the being in touch with your emotions and still having to be hard to survive in your community. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But long story short, without getting too far into it, it's been fun, and then the girls have been fun, and again, I'm just getting ready to enjoy this summer because I got one out, two left to go.
That's good, man. You said like we get better every day. There's no blueprint to this. Oh, and
Facts.
some of you, I apologize on behalf of my colleague when he says the city. That's New York City. I know. So some people in
No,
the city
actually, it's Brooklyn.
Oh, sorry. Excuse me.
Yeah,
Excuse me.
New York City's the 5 boroughs, but
The city
Brooklyn
is
is its
Brooklyn.
own
So
thing.
when he says the city, if you
Mhm.
you happen to be down south or West Coast, maybe you don't know where he's talking about. You don't know like what city is he talking about? Well, people from Brooklyn, they only believe one city is a city. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we just
I mean,
have to.
I'm be honest with you, Los. I think anybody listening understood it. I'm just gonna be candid with you.
Of
You know what
course,
I
somebody
mean?
from the city would say that. Yeah. So yeah. Well, great. That's great, man. Super dope. Listen, those of you listening, watching in, thank you for tuning in. Like, subscribe, follow, share this with somebody. Share this with a Black father, a Black son. Share this with somebody who could benefit from this. Your uncle, your brother, your son, your niece, or your nephew. Share this with somebody when you hear this and say, "Yo, I think they would benefit from this." That person who came to your mind, share it out to them. So again, Black Dad Unfiltered. We're going to talk about this first piece, which was really good, and talking about navigating parenting. I'll set it up a little bit, and Coach Rod, I'm gonna let you go ahead and run with it, and we'll go back and forth a little bit on this particular portion. But
Absolutely.
in navigating parenting, this woman, I think you know the name of the platform. You can bring it up
It's
and let our
called
listeners
the
know.
Mama's Den. It's a podcast
The Mama's Den
that I
podcast.
follow, and it was
Okay.
it was a pretty interesting clip that they had. I think they posted it. Shout out to the Mama's Den. I think they posted this clip on March 11th. But go ahead, Los.
Yeah, and the young lady, she started off at the very beginning saying, "Let them daddies tell them babies no," which is a great way to start it off. I'm like, what are you talking about? Let them daddies tell them babies no. And what she went on to talk about is how she has a child. And I believe she said she had an only child. And so she didn't tell her child no. She would let her child have almost anything. This is her own words. She would say yes. She even went into reference her own childhood. And she said that when I was young growing up, my mom told me no because we didn't have the money for everything. She was like, I have the money. I'm able to get this stuff. So my daughter wants this. Sure, I'll give you that. Baby, you want this? Sure, I'll give you that as well. And by her starting off and saying, let them daddies tell them babies no sometimes, shows me to say that either her in her own circle or her own life or somebody she knows about has had some type of point in their life where the both parents have come together and did not agree on what the baby should always have. And I think for the most part, we feel like the dad is the person that says no. That's not everybody's relationship, but dad is for this example, is the person that was saying no, they can't have stuff. And it sounds like she was saying, and it didn't sound like she was saying it with attitude. It sounded like she was saying, it's okay, go ahead and let them have it. But it also sounded like she was saying, I got older, my child got older, and I think I should have allowed my husband to say no sometimes because I just said yes to everything.
Either the husband or the partner or the father,
Yes.
however you want to frame it, right?
Yeah.
I love that clip, right? Because one, it was very authentic, right? This wasn't to me at least, it was clear she wasn't someone that was trying to spoil her child. She just didn't see a reason to say no to the child.
That's good.
Right. And I think there's a theory where, they tell you don't say no to the kids because the damage of hearing no, what it can do to children, right?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, in the Black community, that never landed, but nevertheless, okay.
Well, we Unfiltered.
But,
Go ahead.
she said, and she said, kid does great in school.
Yes,
kid does great. And the kid wasn't asking for anything, outrageous. You're in the mall. Can I get this? Right? Yeah, sure. It's just trinkets. But what it made me think about was always the different perspectives from the two different positions.
Yeah.
Right. Well, if we talk in the traditional sense, the man and the woman and how they look at things, right? And how they view things. And I loved her transparency because, again, you said it. As she got older, as her daughter got older, because there was no parameters, there was no basis, her daughter, and I don't want to say it wrong because I'm sure the daughter's amazing, did not know what no sounded like. So that creates a level of an entitlement to some extent, right? I should have this. And more importantly, what she goes on to say was her daughter did not learn the concept of earning it, right? And this is where it becomes slightly different because, again, I encourage you to go, and again, I shout out anyone who's doing something good for the community. When you start reading the comments, it was the opposing views, right? Even the comments, you had one person saying, I don't believe in making kids earn it. Not in a negative way. At least I didn't read it negatively. It was, I don't want to put that emphasis of starting from the negative. I rather teach them mindfulness, in that sense. And I said, okay, I can see your perspective. And then someone else was like, no, them babies need to hear no, because they're gonna grow up. They're gonna grow up to be entitled. And it's interesting because I can almost say the same thing with my children. You know what I mean? Like, as much as I, try to lay down a foundation, they, because my parents did, my job was to do a little bit better than them. And I can see it. I can see you not really grasping, this concept of balance and mindfulness. So it was interesting, bro.
What do you think? I know we can only assume. What do you think it is that she saw, right? That she's saying, let them make, because she started off, man, let them daddies to them babies know. Obviously, she learned something later on. Like, we call it the Monday morning quarterback, right? That means you watch the game on Sunday, on Monday morning, you are the quarterback. He should should have did this or somebody. So it's
hindsight,
easy Monday morning court. It's hindsight looking back. But obviously, she learned something. What do you think it is, or what do you think are some of the things that she's referencing that she learned when she's saying, tell them babies no? Because a lot of times you hear a statement like that, especially in our community, that statement can be a whole paragraph.
So before I even touch on that, I just want to point one question. We're not going to answer it, right? Why did she think of why telling them no? No, let me rephrase that. Why did she think telling them no was mean? That's when we're going to put a pin in that. Why telling a child no was considered mean and not healthy? Because that's the difference in perspective. Because she says, let them be mean. She doesn't say, let them build, let them train, let them educate. But to answer your question, I mean, at the end of the day, saying yes to a doll that costs $15 is easy. When your kid starts wanting you pay for things that cost $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, and they don't have no concept of value of your effort and work to accumulate this money. That clearly starts becoming this whole, rift where you're like, wait a minute, where'd we go wrong? What's happening here? Don't you realize somebody has to work for this? Because the kid never understood. No, you get what I'm saying? It's like what they do when we grew up. You're gonna finish your food. Like, I want McDonald's. Well, here's 2 slices of bread and some ground meat. There goes your McDonald's. Right? I'm not gonna give you what you asking for when we got something perfectly good here, and it starts creating that balance in you. You know what I'm saying? So that's the only thing I can think of. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say too that into this topic that we're talking about, that your upbringing has something to do with your parenting. And if your upbringing is different than the upbringing of the person that you have a relationship with, whether that be your spouse, whether that be your partner, your upbringing is more than likely going to be different than theirs. So she was saying, she even went on to explain, I was told no by my mother because we couldn't afford it. Which leads me to say, like, I ask you the question, what are some things you might assume? I can strongly assume that she heard no and did not want to tell her child no because of the way it made her feel.
Quite possibly.
She did not have the same reason that her mother didn't have. So therefore, I don't have to tell my child no because I have it. And I don't like the way it made me feel. So since I was raised that way, I want to change that. Now, I'm not saying it's right, bad, wrong, and different, but I'm saying that it is a difference in the way that she was raised and the way that somebody else was raised. And this is just, to me, a small example of one of the things that she was raised with in her house, and that she allowed to influence her parenting, that's going to influence somebody else, going to have another influence, and that's going to cause some type of clash. And that's where you got to do some navigation. So I do believe that she came to a point where she was raised up, and I would like to believe when she said, let them fathers tell them babies no, that her husband or her significant other or the father of the child didn't have the same upbringing or didn't have the same type of value system when it came to no. It sounded like he ain't had no problem saying no, right? Sound like he ain't had no problem setting up some type of guide for that child, because for her, I believe, just like you explained, once she got older and the child got older, wait a minute, we missing something here. We're missing something that I didn't, maybe I wasn't aware of when I wasn't telling my child no, but now my child is a little bit older now. I didn't see this. I didn't see this was going to be a problem.
Listen, and hate to segue, but one of my greatest experiences is probably one of my toughest experiences growing up. I tell everybody this story that's in my circle, right? And you got grandfather quotes, I got dad stories, right? Right? So when I got to college, so when we played football, so you go to camp before. So I'm going to football camp before school actually starts, right? And so I didn't grow up with means. So my father says, okay, this is what you're gonna do. Oh, actually, I'm gonna fast forward. This is my sophomore year. So I get a little used car, $2,000. It wasn't gonna last more than 4 months. Anyway, I'm gonna hit the story here. I want to hit it right. I've never driven out of New York City before, right? Never. So my dad goes like this. Okay, this is what you're gonna do. You're going to take this street. You're going to take it straight down. You're going to go over a bridge. When you get to that first light, you're going to make a right. Okay. That next light you see after you make a right, make a left. Okay. When you go 200 miles, make sure you stop and get gas, continue, and then you'll be at Buffalo.
Wait a minute.
Yeah. That's how
you make that left, you make that right. And like,
yeah.
Then when you go 200 miles.
Yeah. Actually, what he actually said was, don't let your tank go below half. So to me, it's, and this is the day of MapQuest and all that stuff. So you have to.
Yes. Wait. You guys can't speed past that. This ain't no cell phones. Ain't no navigation that reroutes you. This is map questions you got printed out.
And drive and print, right? You got to look at it. And then I'll give you one more. I didn't own a printer. So you writing stuff down on a piece of paper. Listen, when I tell you I was so angry at my father, so angry, because we went to a school that people like us was in the minority, even in the school.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And all the black kids were on the football team. There wasn't many of us on that either. Right.
It wasn't.
It really wasn't. So so I had resentment because I'm sitting here like, man, why can't I have a father that would just drive with me? You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
What I learned maybe 4, 5, 7 years later, when I started comparing myself, and I don't want to compare, but when I started looking at my peers, that I was able to make decisions on my own, and I was able to draw conclusions on my own, and I figured out how to do stuff on my own because my father was insistent on not holding my hands through everything. So if I had to go to mechanic, you go to a mechanic, you ask him this. I'm like, what? 18, 19, having to deal with, he was not sympathetic. I always tell people my dad was a lion and I was a cub. Threw me off a cliff. If I came back, I was his son. If I didn't, he could make 2, 3 more. So you know what I mean?
I just caught that.
Yeah, right.
If he didn't make it back, he can make 2 or 3 more.
Right. But I say all that to say you don't realize it in the moment because it sounds harsh. It may look harsh.
Yeah.
But the reality of it is there's certain things you have to prepare a child for mentally and physically in this world, right? And I look at people and they're frozen when it comes to making tough decisions. That part was painful. I won't lie to you, because driving 400 miles, and never being in certain places, and all of a sudden all you see is cows and you don't know where to exit, and it's scary. But
can I ask you this in that?
Go ahead.
Go ahead. You
go ahead, brother. No,
I want to ask you in this because we're in the midst of what we're talking about.
Sure.
How did that impact your parenting? And were there any things
That's a good question.
that showed up in your parenting that butted heads with the parenting of your partner?
So I took sprinkles of my father,
Okay.
right? Sprinkles, which means I would drive you to school, right?
Mm-hmm.
I definitely would drive you to school. I will go with you to the bookstore,
Yeah.
right? But I'm gonna teach you once. You can always call on me if you need help.
Yeah.
But so I'm big on you got to own this process now. And so one of the sayings in my house, and my kids get like the eye rolls, is you're gonna live with the benefits and consequences of your decisions.
Mm.
I'm gonna help you learn how to make decisions though.
Mm-hmm.
So I took that from my father, and I realized I can't coddle you. I can't, it's not always gonna be dad to the rescue.
Mm-hmm.
You have to learn how to do this. I don't like it. It hurts me as a father because I remember the pain that I felt. But I have to do this so that you can function in a world without me. Because one of my responsibilities as a father is to prepare you to live without us and not be dependent on us.
Yeah.
So, and it conflicted because, again, that word mean stuck to me from that podcast.
Mm-hmm.
It conflicted because it was you're harsh, you're mean, they don't like it, right? How else are they going to learn?
Right.
Right.
That's a great.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? You don't get diamonds by washing coal with water. You get diamonds by pressure, applying
Yeah.
pressure. Go ahead.
And that's interesting too. Just like bringing up some of the reasons and some of the things that people were saying in particular, and for that clip. But I do believe there needs to be some guidance, right? I do believe that no or a form of no will help to guide a child. One of the things I definitely believe is like a guardrail. So those of you listening and watching, I don't think I've talked about it much on here at all, but I used to be a New York State police officer. So I was a New York State trooper. I was a police officer. I did anything you can think of as a police officer as far as serving, like domestics, robberies, homicides. I think I was on the case of something of that nature. But I worked the road as well, and working the road wasn't the predominant thing that I did for the entire job. So I won't go too far into it. But New York State police officers, some people think being from New York State, all they do is work the interstate. That's not all they do. But I did work the interstate as a part of my job, and you would see these guide rails, right? And you pay attention to them when you're working out there. And to those of you listening, those of you watching, you're going to pay a little bit more attention after I say this. So when there's guide rails on the side of the road, they're not for the entire road. They're not on the entire stretch of the road. Whether you're on the interstate, whether you're on a regular road in your neighborhood or in your city, they don't go the entirety of the road, right?
Sure.
You see them usually around turns, and you see them around bridges. I'll say that again: around turns, around bridges. And what guide rails, the purpose of a guide rail is to keep a minor accident from becoming a major one.
Ooh.
Right? So again, the purpose of a guide rail is to keep a minor accident from becoming a major one. I bring that up to say, without the guide rail on some turns and over bridges, something that could have been minor, a minor fender bender, a minor tearing up your car, or it could be the car could be totaled, but the person is okay. Without the guide rail, that car could flip over. Everybody could be dead in the car. People could go over the side of the bridge. I look at parenting, knowing this particular discussion as a guide rail, right? When you put that guide up on your child's life, it's a minor thing at that point, which some children don't like. Which I'm a reference our show before, and you were talking about when you picked your son up, right? And you picked him up, and you was like, "Man, why are you getting attitude?" You're thinking this to yourself, but you said, "Yo, why would he be happy about me picking up?" Y'all go catch that episode. I can't go far into it, but Coach Rod gave a great illustration.
Watch all the episodes to find it, by the way.
Watch them. Yeah, we're gonna make you find it.
Yeah.
But in that moment, you were teaching him something that he didn't love at that moment, but it was a minor thing at the moment. But at some point in his life, it's going to be a major thing. I believe parents saying no, putting up guide rails, doing things for our children at a certain age that they might not like is going to keep them later on down the road. So like you, I don't think it's mean. Like, and does stick out to me when people are saying it was harsh or it's negative. And I'm sure people have their reasons for it. But again, I'd rather keep something minor from becoming something major.
I knew once you put the pocket square on, we're about to have a real show today. I see what you're doing. I see what you're doing.
Listen,
So,
listen.
but you mentioned something a little bit earlier that I want to
Okay.
touch on, which was the upbringing of both parents. And one of the
Yes.
reasons why I was excited about having this conversation and navigating parenting wasn't necessarily focusing on the kid. It was really more so focusing on bringing two different people together
Mm-hmm.
to make decisions,
Mm.
right, for the child. You know, like
Mhm.
when most people think about navigating co-parenting when we're not together. And I think one of the conversations I don't hear nobody talk about is when you have that child, how do we
Yeah.
parent together? Because the assumption on the outside world is, oh, we're in lockstep.
Mm.
But this lady just saying the words are very menological. So we listen to the words verbatim, right? Women speak from the emotion. So you got to understand what the emotional intent was. But I'm going to speak from a man's ear right now. She says, let that man discipline them, right? Which tells me there's opposition. When you say let, that means to me, the way I'm hearing it is stop interfering with him, disciplining them, if I can say it there like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So now
Yeah.
that tells me, okay, we should have been in lockstep when we started having children, when we got married, when we were together, whatever the case may be. But we're not. And I think this is a conversation we need to have. What are some of the challenges
Mm.
about parenting together, even when you're in love?
Yes.
Because to your point, the upbringing is a huge factor into how you parent. I'll tell you a quick story and then I'll hand it off. So for me, right, the minute my kids got to, I don't know what grade, third, fourth, every Saturday and Sunday, they had to commit to an hour to academics. Like there were no days off, but I wasn't consuming your entire day. Why? Because that wasn't applied to me growing up. And I saw the challenges that I had, you know?
Mhm. Mhm.
So this is an adverse effect of how I grew up.
Mhm.
So I am consistent. Being the way I grew up, you're not sleeping in bed. Come 8 o'clock, get out the bed. Make the bed. There's stuff that can be done,
Mhm.
right? In an hour. But that created some level of conflict, not because my wife at the time was in opposition to it. It was she wasn't enforcing it as well.
Mm.
So if I wasn't there, it wasn't
Mm.
happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
little
That's good.
nuances
That's
is
a
what I
good.
want
I'm
to
not gonna
talk
cut you off. I
about.
want you to dive into it because that's beautiful. I'm not gonna cut you off at all. But
No,
to
but I want
say
to hear from
that
you.
she, it wasn't necessarily that she disagreed with it, but she didn't reinforce it. Oh man, you're right, dude. But a lot of people aren't talking about these parts.
Listen,
A lot of
I
people
did
aren't talking about those
piano,
parts.
right? Because I was in the your family sings, and I was in the music business for a little bit, managing artist, right? And so for me, fundamentally, because I'm an athlete, all my kids are going to play instruments. You're going to read. You're going to do math. You're going to play
Mhm.
sports, right? I'm going to keep you
Mhm.
busy, right? You won't even know how to spell streets once I'm done with you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right? And so I was playing for music lessons, and my son was gifted, right? He just picked it up and just started playing. Again, goes back to it. Because I played sports, my understanding of discipline is slightly different. There is a regiment, there is a schedule, you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so it became one of those things again, where if I'm not here, if I have to go on a meeting, if I have to take another kid someplace, because you don't value this the way I do,
Mm.
right? And so I say, all right, forget it then. You won't play an instrument because it can't be just one of us. And that's not, and I want to be clear when I say this, that's not an indictment on my kid's mother at all. It
Mhm.
was, we had different values. It's easy to see the clear values. Oh, we both believe in Jesus. That's easy to see.
Mhm.
It's the nuances of, to your point, how we were raised, how we want to fight, how we were raised, what is important to us,
Yeah.
right? And that's what can tear people apart, man.
I gotta bring this part up too, man. We unfiltered. We here, so we not putting a pretty bow on everything, right? Am I right?
Yo, listen, man, I don't even own a bow. I'm just telling you right now. I don't own a filter to own a bow. I don't even own a
So,
pocket square. But I'm about to get one though.
well, listen, you know what I'm saying? Sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do, you know?
Man,
So,
you
yeah.
do it too often, man. I see.
So what I'm saying is we're going to talk about and have the conversations that are not always popular.
Yeah,
and the
sure.
reason why I bring it up right now is because many times you hear the conversations and there's a pretty bow at the end. So my example of this importance of navigating parenting is I have an example between me and my brothers growing up where this happened. Like the navigating of the parenting probably didn't go so good in this particular instance, and it hurt at the end of it. So what am I saying? So in this, it's going to be even a little bit different from the story you've just told.
Sure.
My father would not let my older brothers play sports when they were younger, football in particular. I can assume he just maybe thought it was too dangerous. Maybe he didn't want them to get hurt. And my mother didn't really care in the sense of like, it wouldn't have bothered her. And so to grow up a little bit more and my parents aren't together anymore, my mom lets me get involved in the football at a young age. I excel, then went to high school, get all kind of records you could think of. I think I'm still in the Hall of Fame. I think I still own the single rushing.
Yeah. Just get to your story. Get to your story.
I was trying to be modest, you know what I'm saying? But I could tell her, it's just unfiltered. So I can talk about stuff too. I own the single season rushing yard record still at my high school. I didn't know I had it. Those men who are still in. I didn't know I had it. So I went to speak to the team recently, and the guy I played with is the coach. And he told me when I spoke to the team, he said, he pointed out a kid, really good athlete. He said, he almost broke your record. I said, what record? He said, he almost broke your single season rushing record. He said, but you need to thank this other big fella over here. I said, why? He said, he had a holding call. He said, and that penalty caused him not to break your record. I said, thank you, big fella. Thank you, big fella. But I'll go on to say I went to play high school football, went to play college football, earned a full scholarship, right? Became a captain of that team, got an education because of it, because I was allowed to play at a young age. My brother was 5 times the athlete that I was in football. My oldest brother was by far the one we looked up to playing in the neighborhood football. Like, he was that nice wide receiver, and he just did not pursue it because our father wouldn't let him play at a young age. Navigating parenting, right? How do you navigate that when your son has a tremendous talent, but your father doesn't want him to play? It doesn't bother your mother, and since your father didn't want him to play, it cost him something in his future.
Potentially,
I don't have a crystal ball. Say it again.
Yeah, I said potentially cost him, right?
It potentially cost him. I know he could have played college football. Not pro or after that, I don't know. But if I went on to play college football on a full scholarship, I know my brother could win and play. So I do believe it greatly potential on the potential space affected him. And I bring that up to say again, this wasn't the pretty bow. Like, this wasn't the story where navigating parenting worked out for the best and then yay at the end. I believe hindsight, 2020, right? Looking back on it, I believe it affected our lives, man. So I bring that up just to say it's worth the work that we must do to be able to navigate parenting. And we're not going to get it perfect, but it's going to cost somebody something if we don't at least put the work in.
And that goes back to what we talked about in terms of communication. Now, going back to your brothers, I would have whooped all y'all still. I just want to make that clear. Let's not fool ourselves. You know what I'm saying? I'm just gonna be real about that. You know what I'm saying? But going back to it, so I have a similar story. And again, the reason why I love having these type of conversations is since the whole purpose of the show is to talk about things, be a platform. Hopefully, there's another father out there and who's hearing this, or there's a mother out there, or whoever is hearing this and saying, oh, I can see a different perspective. Because we don't have solutions. We can only talk about experiences. My biggest thing was when the pandemic hit, my son is a 4-sport athlete. Right? And so when the pandemic hit, do you take the vaccine?
Do you say that again?
You take the vaccine. Because my son couldn't play, and it was going into, I think, his freshman or soft. So he's on track. to be a track athlete or a lacrosse athlete. Meanwhile, he's played 2 other sports and was good at that. But the 2 sports where he can go Division 1A would have been those. You're talking about 5'11" at the time, 185 pounds of solid and can just run.
Mm-hmm.
And this was the hard part about the navigating, the parenting. And we only use this example because there's no right or wrong. Mother was anti-vaccine. I'm anti-vaccine. But I'm looking at my son and seeing the misery on his face. Because the thing that he loved, which was being active, was taken away.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so at some point I was like, what do I do? Because as a parent, if you see your child has a passion for something, and that goes through the parenting, there's no right or wrong answer. So I was just like, yo, listen, at the end of the day, we don't know what we don't know, but what I do know is that this is affecting him. But I do know on her end, she was adamant it will not happen. And I had choice. I can either fight, right? Or I can acquiesce. And so this is the part where, had there been better communication, had there been a better flow of chemistry, which is what we're really promoting here is, folks, when you're in these relationships, try your best to create a good relationship. It just, to your point, it's a sad thing. Because so then my son eventually ended up quitting sports, right? Because that 1 year took a toll.
So, man, you just brought up a whole nother nuance, right? For the most of the show, we've even been today. We've been talking about navigating parenting as far as working together with that parent.
Yeah.
So navigating parenting is not just navigating with the other parent, but navigating how you parent the children. Man,
listen,
this is a good show.
But this is why I was so excited about having it, because it's easy to talk about a bitter ex or depression. I don't say easy to talk about depression, but you get what I'm saying? It's easy, but we've lived this. There's nuances that we want men to understand before you even get into this. Because remember, we talked about a show when so you have to make a wise decision on who you decide to marry. It can either bring out the best in you or cut you in half.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
But also it's not clear cut. Right. This is why, again, think about this. It's easy to talk about the outcomes of a biracial child, right? Because if you're half black, half white, there's some nuances that you're going to have to navigate in this world, right? And there's a lot of content there on that. But what about when it's just you're both black but different cultures? You're both black, different religious beliefs. You're both black, single mother home, single father home. Right? Different disciplining styles.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the things that and I do give my kid's mother a lot of credit for this. And we were married for quite a long time. She wasn't on board at first, but she rocked with me. I was very big on my children not watching TV Monday through Friday in the house.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and if I can do it again, I may have relinquished just a slight bit. We only kept one TV in the house. One. So that way, if children were watching TV, we always knew what was on television. And if we wanted to watch TV, it had to be something that the kids could see as well. Yeah. That was something I was big on because I wanted to filter what the media was bringing into their life. Yeah. Now, that's not the norm for people in this day and age. What you're going to hear is, let them kids just enjoy themselves. I'm like, yeah, television's a drug to me. So why would I do that?
Right.
Anyway. Go ahead. I can go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, I hear you, man. I want to bring in that other nuance for me that you just brought in that was so powerful, like mind blowing when you brought it up, when you said you and the mother of your children, y'all were on the same page. So I was like, oh, where's this story going? I'll turn into a listener. All right. He was like, but my son. It's like, wow. So there's another part of this when we talk about navigating parenting. And I bring up that other part to talk about the child because I have a friend. Yeah. You and I, we talked about this offline. I have a friend and his child is an adult now, right? His child is well in their 30s, right? 30 and 30 above. And his daughter growing up, kind of similar to the thing we talked about at the very beginning. His daughter growing up had a mother who would let her do almost whatever. Like, I'm not saying just whatever, but like, spoil your child. Yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
saying you shouldn't spoil your child, but again,
Depends
guardrails.
what you're spoiling them with, right?
Right. You give some type of guidance.
Yeah.
So let the child do whatever, spoil the child, raise them. Very similar to the lady how she was talking. I believe it was that type of environment where there's no reason for me to say no. Yes, you can have this. Yes, you can have, and gave the child all these things. And the dad, they weren't in the same home together, but the dad was like, "Yo, this is," he was trying to put structure in. Again, similar to what you said, you brought up as well. Yeah, I had certain rules, but they just weren't being followed up on when I wasn't there. A lot of that was present. He had rules and things for his daughter, but when his daughter wasn't in his presence and she was with the mom, she got a chance to do all the things that she wanted to do, and she didn't have to pay attention to the rules that dad was putting down. And when she was young, she thought, oh, why dad don't want me to do this? Now,
Yeah.
small sidebar in the same realm, if your child wants to put their hand on the stove, I had a child who wanted to do that when he was younger, when the stove was hot. I'm like, no. Of course, he getting upset. Am I a good parent if I let him put his hand on the stove? No, he's gonna burn himself. He didn't like me for keeping him back from it, but he understands now why I didn't let him do it.
Mm-hmm.
The daughter grew up. I told you she's an adult now. The daughter says to the father, Rod, Dad, I would have been better off living according to the rules that you were trying to place into my life. Oh, not
Mm-hmm.
the mother saying something. The daughter
Sure.
who was raised and wasn't being told no on a regular basis grew up and now is an adult. And now the daughter is saying to her father, very similar to what the lady said in the first clip we talked about. Let them daddies tell them babies no sometimes.
Listen, I'll add to that because the same thing happens with me and my mother and my father. My mother is everything in the world to me, right? I can do anything. I have so much courage because I know my mother always got my back. However, if my father wasn't there, I don't think I'm on this today doing this podcast with you because it's this overcompensation of love and wanting me to be happy. Again, I tell people, right? I really don't know growing up if my father cared about being happy. I don't even know if he knew how to spell happy. You know what I mean? I don't know. I really
Everybody
don't
got time
know.
for that happiness.
I don't know. You know what I mean? And so that has its issues. But however, my level of discipline, I don't get to your point. You earned a scholarship. I earned a football scholarship, right? I don't get there, right? Without someone who's willing to strike the fear of God in me to be like, yo, no, we're not doing this. This is not debatable. This is your character. This is your integrity. I always say what I loved about my father, especially as I grew up. His yes was his yes, his no was his no. He never went back on it. To this day, he never goes back on his yes. He never goes back on his no. If he says no, it's no. And this is a done deal, right? And so I also want to give the flip side to your story because I don't want any women listening to this thinking that we're saying you got to let the dad do it. There are women out there who try to make good decisions, right? I got a friend, same thing. A number of friends. They're like, they want their children to, get ready for dinner, do your homework first. And the dads are just like, hey, nah, they can play for a little bit. They can do their homework later.
Yeah.
Right. I don't want, the kids to have cell phones young. Well, dad's going to give it to you. Right. Because, with men, what can you do to me? I'm going to do what I want. I'm their father. So it goes both ways. This is why. And I wish, we got to do the show again and keep talking about this. We really want to bring out this nuances to this, folks. There's nuances and we got to have the discussions. This is why when they say have couples therapy or marriage therapy or whatever you do before you start, it has value because you're going to be asked questions that you never thought about. It's not about co-parenting when we're not together. It's about how do we parent? Because you just brought it up, Los. Not only do we got to figure out how to parent together because resentment will happen if we can't get this right together.
Yes.
Then also, we got a young one here that's dependent on our ability to get it together. If you remember on one of our shows, I think, how do you lead as a husband and a father in your home?
Yeah.
We defined the whole purpose of leadership. Leadership was to bring harmony and wellness to your family.
Most definitely.
Well, if we can't parent together, ain't no harmony.
None at all. And that's going to filter into the child, bar none for sure. I think this is a dope show, man. I'm sitting back listening. I'm sitting back watching, and I'm like, this is some good information. Black Dad Unfiltered. Again, we've here to cause the conversation, like you've even stated on today's show. We're not here to say we got all the answers. We're having a conversation in hopes that those who are listening will pick up something. That will pick up something to want them to do better. Maybe pick up some tips that you could add to your own life, that you would hear something that would trigger you to say, hey, I might do it this way. That's cool. We don't mind that. We want to trigger you to do something better, to change the narrative, to show that there are fathers out here, there are Black fathers doing well. Love it again, man. We can go on and on with this one, but yo, I know we got to bring it to a close, man. I'm Carlos V. Spencer. We're here, Black Dad Unfiltered. Yet again, I had a wonderful time today.
Man, listen, this is Coach Rod. Tune in every second and fourth Thursday of the month. We drop a new episode. Let's go. Let's grow. Let's go get this.
Let's go. Let's go. Let's grow. Let's grow. Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get it.